Mr. Alex Jouney. Alex Jouney up. He's a great guy that I got to meet last year, and he was kind enough to come back and do the presentation this year. So we're really happy to have him. He's a very knowledgeable individual about amphibians, specifically in the southeast region, but we're really happy to have him. Thank you for doing this, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So my name is Alex Jouney. I'm the native aquatic species biologist for the southeast region for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I just kind of wanted to start today by talking a little bit about the turnover that we've had at our agency. So a lot of familiar names are probably not on this list anymore. So as Stephen mentioned, Tina Jackson has retired, and Daniel Newbaum is now our species conservation coordinator on the terrestrial side of things. We've had a lot of shakeups in the native aquatic species world too. So myself and Tyler Swar, we actually started in August of 2022, so we're kind of fresh faces in the agency. Dan Kamek's been around since 2018. And then Boyd Wright, who you all probably have heard of or met, is actually promoted into a reclamation biologist position, and currently our Northeast conservation biologist position is vacant, although I think we hired somebody in the last couple days. Harry Crockett also has retired, effective at the end of this month, and Jen Logan, who was formerly our Northwest conservation biologist, has taken over for Harry just recently here. So I'll start off with a couple of reptile updates. I'm not a reptile guy, so if you have questions, I would direct you elsewhere, but I can do my best to answer any questions if you have them. So Stephen talked about this a little bit, but CPW helped fund a graduate project at University of Northern Colorado, examining occurrence and relative abundance of Massasauga rattlesnake across the southeast region, and it sounds like maybe a little bit in the northeast region as well. From the sound of it, it sounds like the fieldwork component is complete, and hopefully we'll expect a report this spring. And I would encourage you to reach out to Stephen or Dan if you have any questions regarding the Massasauga project. For other reptiles, many of you know that we're actually in the process of kind of re-examining our state wildlife action plan from 2015. And we've been revising it, I think, with some help from folks at COPARC as well. And the plan is to have that rolled out in 2025. But Dan is really hoping to assess what reptiles are in need of additional conservation efforts throughout this revision process, and then subsequently allocate some resources to those species. Very similar to amphibians, many of our Tier 2 species of greatest conservation concern in Colorado on the reptile side have not been really addressed in a meaningful way by the state yet. So we're hoping to kind of turn that around and get some more efforts, boots on the ground in that regard. So now shifting to boreal toads, which is going to be kind of the bulk of my amphibian updates here. With all of the turnover we had, we have not actually gotten our final numbers of breeding sites visited, total sites visited, active breeding and all that for 2023 yet. And just yesterday, actually, I received our BD swab. So if anybody has specific questions on chytrid status of certain sites, I can probably answer that, but I didn't have time to put it into the presentation. But just as a recap from 2022, 78 known breeding sites were visited. This is statewide. And total number of site visits was 224. So a lot of these sites we visit multiple times throughout the year to capture that temporal aspect of breeding at these sites. And 26 sites last year had active breeding. So to put this into context, in the early 2000s, there was around 40 sites with active breeding. And if you go back to the 80s and 90s, there was probably many more than that. So in lieu of having some statewide numbers to give you, I'm actually going to kind of go by region and just talk about some of the amphibian updates from each region. So in the Northeast region, Boyd Wright was hard at work this year, got a lot of really awesome work done. Was able to partner with the Forest Service and Denver Zoo to monitor 10 breeding sites in Clear Creek County and the northern part of Larimer County, kind of Cherokee Park, Cameron Pass area. They were able to continue a mark recapture study from a translocated population at Zimmerman Lake. Zimmerman Lake has been gangbusters lately. It has really been producing a lot of toads, and this year they actually found 12 egg masses, which is a new record for that site. They coordinated with the Denver Zoo Citizen Science Project, which if y'all haven't heard about this, I encourage you to get involved. It's a great way for people who have an interest in boreal toad conservation to take an active role in kind of some of the work that we're doing. But the Denver Zoo had a great year this year. They discovered a new breeding site in Larimer County, and that is pretty rare. We don't usually discover new breeding sites these days, so that was a really big find. And then in addition to that, there was a new adult toad observation in Clear Creek County, which could be leading to hopefully finding another breeding population. Although not completing any translocation projects in the Northeast region on CPW's end, they were able to support multiple translocation projects in Rocky Mountain National Park this year by providing 10,000 tadpoles. These eggs were collected across 2 different sites in the Northeast region, specifically in Larimer County, and from 26 total egg masses, which should provide some good genetic variability for these translocated populations in the national park. The Northeast region has really been a leader when it comes to northern leopard frog conservation as well. So you probably heard about this last year if you were at the meeting, but this occupancy and survey method study is still ongoing with Waverly Davis kind of leading that effort and her advisor Larissa, who I'm sure many of you also know. But last year, CPW received an internal grant funding to expand this project to include a master's student. So initially it didn't really start out that way, but now with bringing on a master's student, we're going to be able to analyze the landscape ecology of the species, as well as include some habitat covariates and expand this study a little bit more. So as of this year, the analysis has been completed for Chapter 1, which is our methods comparison. They did a pretty neat study looking at detection probabilities, comparing visual encounter surveys, environmental DNA samples, and then also using our song meters, acoustic monitors, to detect certain species. In addition, the Northern Leopard Frog Head Starting and Translocation Project had its first year. This is really cool. This was a great collaborative effort between a multitude of different agencies. But the Innovation Center had a curriculum built around this rearing of wild sourced eggs, northern leopard frog eggs, to a late Gossamer stage where it would be appropriate to stock them into a new translocation site. And this is really cool because it represents our first ever captive breeding or captive rearing of northern leopard frog in Colorado. And I'm really hoping that this project kind of lays the framework and groundwork for more of these types of projects to occur around the state. They were able to release some tadpoles to establish a new population in a restored wetland on private property in Left Hand Canyon. This is a great little site. I actually used to work for Boyd, so I've been to this area before, but it's a cool little off-channel system with a couple different ponds. There's room for some native fish work as well as native amphibian work there, and some great landowners that have been really cooperative and kind of letting CPW come into their property and do some really meaningful conservation work. In addition, the Northeast region was able to incorporate a herp species ID and life history curriculum into their Fisheries Day, which they do every year, at Stalker Lake with some high school students from out east. Big thanks to Remy for heading this up. It seems like he had a pretty active role in that, and it's great to just get more herp stuff going on with CPW's educational priorities. So moving westward, in the Northwest region this year, the crew was able to survey 11 of their 49 total breeding sites. And again, most of these sites were visited a couple times to capture that temporal aspect of breeding. As many of you know, this was a weird water year in Colorado, very weird snow year too, and I think making multiple visits to these sites was definitely necessary. A lot of things were kind of thrown off this season. Between CPW and the US Forest Service, though, they were able to collect 100 swabs just from the Northwest region. That's huge, and I think it'll help us establish a little better understanding of the distribution of chytrid on the landscape up there, as well as integrating that information into our breeding site monitoring. A little bit of sad news. Barker Ponds, which was historically a pretty productive breeding site for boreal toads, went chytrid positive in 2022. And unfortunately, they're really seeing the effects already just after 1 year. This year, they only found 1 toad, and the tadpoles that they were able to find, unfortunately, didn't metamorphose. But on the flip side of things, they have a lot of other sites that are doing pretty well, and specifically East Fork Homestead Creek has been just gangbusters. It's been killing it. Breeding has really expanded from that normal pond, and I was up there this year, and we were finding tadpoles in tire ruts on the road. So you know, you lose something, but you're gaining something as well. Fortunately, we were able to collect 4,500 tadpoles for a southeast translocation project this year. It's kind of interesting. Due to snowpack and other factors, we kind of missed the ball on collecting eggs. So we went up there with some coolers and collected some tadpoles instead, and it actually worked out really well. I was kind of worried that it wasn't going to work out, but we had really good survivability, and once we got them into the hatchery, they did really well. Another project in the Northwest region is Willow Creek. So this is a translocation project that's been going on for 4 years now. They were able to collect 1,000 eggs from Buzzard Creek, which is just down the hill from this site, and we're able to stock them for the 4th year in a row here. So this is cool. We're getting to that stage where we may start to see some natural reproduction in the next couple years here, hopefully. Successful metamorphosis was documented, as well as overwintering from our previous plant in 2022. So a lot of good news coming out of the Northwest. The Southwest region, I had a little bit less, but still some good news. The Brittle Silver Basin, which is pictured here, is in its 6th year of stocking. So there's 6 age classes present, and for those of you that know a lot about boreal toads, that's typically when you might start seeing some staging behavior and actual natural reproduction. So this year they were able to see some staging behavior. They didn't find any eggs or natural reproduction yet, but I think it'll be really telling next year. Hopefully we start to see some of that. In the Creed region, there was multiple translocations going on over the last few years, and we're seeing survival at multiple age classes at these sites. However, Brittle Silver is still kind of the big success story coming out of the Southwest right now. There will be a new project implemented this coming summer at the Schofield Crystal River Basin, North Pole area. And this is kind of cool because it's a collaborative effort between the Southwest and Northwest. So it's actually technically part of the Northwest region, but it's much easier to get to from the Southwest region. So Tyler and Dan are really kind of collaborating on this project, and hopefully it'll represent just another effort to get these animals established on the landscape. Coming to the Southeast, I have a little bit more to talk about, and I could probably field a lot more questions from the Southeast. But just to provide an overview of our surveys, we started surveying in mid to late May, and we surveyed all the way until August 2nd. So we had a pretty nice long toading season this year. We were able to hit 47 different surveys at 29 locations. And going into this year, this was kind of my first full year in this position where I got to develop a sampling strategy and everything. And we had, as a group, we had this interagency work group in the Arkansas Basin, and we kind of decided a good priority for this year would have been to visit a lot of places that hadn't been visited in a long time. So not necessarily breeding sites, but going back to places that maybe hadn't been visited in 5 to 10 years. So to that extent, as you can see on the map, we really covered a lot of ground. Didn't find many toads, but zeros are still data. The Denver Zoo, which we collaborated on as well, they were able to visit 3 sites for us and complete 6 surveys at different times of the year. Again, no toads, but zeros are still data, and it was informing us, kind of, if anything, really just kind of highlighting the situation that these animals are in and how scarce and rare they are, and the importance of the work that we're doing. In addition to this, CNHP did their typical breeding site monitoring. They visited all of our sites a couple times this year. And I won't get into those results because that's a little more extensive than 15 minutes. Most of my surveys took place in the Swatch Range, which is where all of our breeding sites are. But we actually did a little bit of work in the wet mountains this year. We had a rogue outlier in our database that said somebody found a boreal toad in the early 90s in the wet mountains. So we went to that point just to investigate it, and obviously we did not find anything, but it's always good to see some new country, and you never know. Some of our significant findings from this year, if you all recall from last year, the Denver Zoo found a toad at Hancock Lakes area. So we're really building off of that work quite a bit, and examining that headwater area around Hancock Lakes and just in that region, we actually were able to find some more toads this year. Don't have any hard evidence of breeding, but I'm sure it's happening. It's somewhere up in that area, and next year should be hopefully pretty telling for us. We found some juveniles at a breeding site in Lake County in early June. which is pretty cool because in 2022, no breeding was actually detected by surveyors, but we found juveniles this year, which means at some point some toads, got some eggs going, and they were able to reproduce and overwinter, which is good news. We have a Browns Creek translocation project that's been happening for about 6 years now. We've stocked it 4 times, and unfortunately we haven't observed overwintering any of the times that we've stocked this. So moving forward, we're kind of shifting our focus to other projects, areas with a little bit more potential. And along those lines, this year a big part of visiting all those sites that we did is we found a lot of potential translocation sites with fantastic habitat. So more surveys will kind of nail that down for us, but it's looking pretty promising in terms of future reintroduction potential. Titan Lake, which has been kind of the big success in the southeast region in the last few years. We documented successful overwintering again this year, so we found 2021 age class and 2022 age class toads. We were able to stock 4,500 tadpoles in August, and it was a really great effort. A lot of folks showed up and came together to kind of work on the recovery of this species up in Lake County. We also completed a bathymetric survey using a little castable sonar unit to support a natural lake level water rate, which just kind of adds another layer of protection to the hydrology at this site. And hopefully moving forward we'll never have to invoke that right, but it's just another layer of protection. Our high count this year prior to our stocking was 226 toads, so that's really great, and we're hoping to continue to see those trends. Interestingly, this year we did find a chorus frog, or we heard a chorus frog, we did not find it, and then 2 adult females we found as well. So this is the first time we've documented adults in this drainage. A big effort for our crew next year is going to be kind of figuring out where those adults came from, whether or not we may have a breeding site somewhere nearby. I mentioned how the northeast region is really leading the charge in terms of northern leopard frog conservation, but southeast is close behind. This year we're going to roll out a pilot study that will hopefully transform over the next couple of years into something a little bit more substantial. But our long-term goals for this project are to identify some new populations of northern leopard frog, as well as develop a better understanding of their current range in the southeast region. On CPW's end, there hasn't really been a lot of work done with northern leopard frogs in the southeast, so it'll be good to get some baseline data. We'd like to identify some strongholds and a potential brood source to aid in future translocation projects. Develop a better understanding of plains leopard frog and northern leopard frog range overlap. Plains leopard frog are not native to the northeast region, but in the southeast we find them a lot. And understanding that range overlap and the associated conservation concerns there will help kind of inform our management of the species. And then secondarily, to monitor some tier 2 amphibian strongholds. So just trying to keep doing more work with these tier 2 species and make strides where we can. The methods we'll be employing this year are visual encounter surveys and acoustic monitoring. Those are going to be the big ones for us just this year in terms of kind of some funding constraints. But we'll also do some eDNA samples as well as some VD swabbing. I'm hoping to expand that with more funding in the years to come. We are also we just wrapped up the second year of a collaborative study that CNHP has taken the lead on with CPW and Colorado State University, providing support to assess tier 2 amphibian status in the southeast region. So again, a lot of these species, they're on CPW's end, we haven't had a lot of work done with them. And so one of my priorities is getting some more work done with these tier 2 species. This year, the species of focus were green toad, western narrowmouth toad, Couch's spadefoot, and Blanchard's cricket frog, presumed extirpated. CNHP did a fantastic job this year. They covered a lot of ground. They hit 636 surveys at 158 different sites. Out of all those surveys, they found green toad and Couch's spadefoot at 27, 28 sites. Western narrowmouth toad at 9 sites, pretty much in the extreme southeast part of the state. Although surveying 36 potential sites for Blanchard's cricket frog, we found no sites occupied to kind of go along with what Jeff was saying. They are presumed extirpated at this point. But outside of that, almost 1,000 herp observations have been added to our database because of this project. So just want to highlight that awesome effort, and a big thanks to Brad and his crew for getting all that work done this year. Did also want to just do a save the date, and if anybody has interest in this Northern Leopard Frog Summit, please reach out to myself or Boyd Wright. or Jen Logan for that matter. This is the first inaugural statewide, conservation meeting regarding northern leopard frogs. And it's going to be a virtual meeting, so it should be pretty easy for folks to attend. And it's going to be on February 16th, so that's actually coming up pretty quick. But like I said, if you have an interest in attending, please reach out to myself, Boyd, or Jen, and we can get you some information on the meeting. But hopefully this is the first in a long line of collaborative meetings that we can, as an agency, work with outside groups and individuals to help further our goals in terms of conservation for northern leopard frog in the state. And I'd just like to say a big thanks to all of our agency partners, CNHP, Forest Service, BLM, COPARC, a lot of other ones, and a big thanks to all of our technicians who get a lot of this work done for us during the field season. We couldn't do the job without our technicians, so a big thanks to them too. And with that, if I have time, I'll take a couple questions.
Okay, earlier
cool.
than any CPW presentation we've had.
Well, thank you.
So, thank you, sir. And I wasn't kidding. That's the most I've seen on a CPW presentation in a long time. So we really appreciate that and your effort and all that you guys have been doing.